Welcome. Thank you for joining the executive talks of our Quantum AI series. We feature the global innovators shaping the future of quantum computing. Today, we meet Dr. Jan Goetz. He's a quantum physicist and the chief executive of IQM. IQM is a company based in Finland that is building the next generation of quantum computers. IQM has assembled an exceptional team of international quantum computing experts developing on-premise systems for high-performance computing applications. The company has raised more than 71 million euro in funding to date, including the largest seed investment round in Finnish history. Dr. Goetz has a doctorate in superconducting quantum circuits from the Technical University of Munich. He has also worked as a Marie-Curie Fellow in Helsinki at Aalto University, where he holds the title of lecturer. He's on the board of the European Innovation Council, the European Quantum Industry Consortium, and he's also a member of the German Federal Economic Senate. Dr. Goetz, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you again for accepting my invitation. It's always great to see you. Your kind courtesies are always greatly appreciated. And before we get started, can you please share what does IQM exactly do, your strategy, your focus? I've noticed you've adopted an HPC strategy, for example. What do you offer? What is your unique value proposition to customers?
Yeah, sure. So in a nutshell, what we do is we build quantum computers. So we are a hardware company and we cover the whole value chain on the hardware side, where we mainly act as a systems integrator. So what we do ourselves is building the quantum processors. So we design them. We have very good design tools for the chipsets. Then we fabricate them. We have access to a state-owned foundry in Finland, but also we have set up our own foundry in Finland where we build the superconducting or fabricate the superconducting chips. And then we act as a systems integrator where we bring all of this together with control electronics and then the lower level software stacks that is needed to control the quantum computers. And as you said correctly, then our strategy is actually to place those systems in supercomputing centers, because we believe that quantum computing is part of the larger supercomputing framework. And in this sense, in our view, the quantum computers belong into the supercomputing centers. So from a commercialization point of view, our strategy is actually to sell then the complete systems into the supercomputing centers, and they are running them in parallel to their classical CPU clusters, but then also GPU or any kind of computing architecture they might have.
And what is the collaboration, the partnership you've established with Atos? What is that about?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the supercomputing scene, there are a few providers out there who equip supercomputing centers with the classical infrastructure, and Atos is one of them, and we are partnering closely with them. And what we are doing with them is we develop together common interfaces so that the quantum computers can actually be nicely integrated into the supercomputing infrastructure. So Atos is building the classical computers and the classical HPC or supercomputing part, and we are building the quantum part. And of course, then there needs to be an interface somewhere. And this is what we are working on together. And we foresee that by doing this, we can really build then a scalable solution, which allows us to bring our quantum computers into many computing centers around the world.
And you recently published a survey from IDC, a report that you commissioned. What prompted that research?
Yeah, that's true. So if you look at our strategy, it's somewhat different to the strategy that you see from many other hardware startups, especially in the US. The focus is very much on cloud, bringing systems into the cloud, which I agree, is also a valid strategy, but in our view, the situation is so that right now we feel that there is a real market for the actual systems, for the hardware systems. And on top of this hardware market, of course, there will be the cloud, which in our view comes when the computers are ready to run certain applications. So for us, it's kind of a timing question that we say, okay, first, we focus on bringing the systems into the supercomputing centers, and we commercialize through this stream. And then later on, when the computers are powerful enough, we will also be able to put them into the cloud. And to somehow justify this strategy, we wanted to be a little bit more fact-based than just saying, okay, we have the feeling that there is a market for quantum computers in the supercomputing centers. To do this, we gathered data through this study that you just mentioned. So it was conducted by IDC, and they called more than 100 supercomputing centers around the world and asked them how they see the topic. Are they willing to invest? Will they invest into on-premises systems? Will they invest into cloud, and when and how much, and all of these questions? And the results actually very nicely confirmed our view that I think the situation that came out is that 76% of the centers, they will adopt to quantum computing by 2023, and a similar fraction will actually invest into on-premise hardware systems by 2026. So basically the nice thing that this study showed is that there is really a market right now for these on-premise systems, and this makes us very confident that our strategy here is going to work out very well in the future.
And how many offices do you have now? I know you recently announced your new office in France, but how many offices do you currently have?
Yeah, so as you mentioned in the beginning, we are headquartered in Finland. So most of our people are working in Finland, in the capital region, in Espoo, which is right next to Helsinki. And we have around 100 people there, or no, it should be more than 100 already. And then we have a larger office as well in Munich. And the distribution between those two offices is that we mainly work on the hardware in Finland, and we focus on the applications and also HPC integration a lot in Munich. And then, as you mentioned, we recently opened an office in Paris, and also we have activities in Bilbao. And here our strategy is that as there is a shortage for talent in quantum, we have to go a little bit to where the talent is. And in both places, Bilbao and Paris, actually, we have very good universities for quantum physics, quantum science, or technology in general. And this was the reasons to go there. And in Bilbao, actually, in Spain, the situation is so that there are very good people working in the topic of quantum finance. And this is why there we actually focus on this application, on this vertical. And what we will do in Paris is we will focus mainly on the aerospace sector, because there's very strong aerospace industry, of course, in France. And this is why we see there's a lot of potential for this. But then, as you mentioned, Atos, for example, they are also Paris-based. So there will be quite a lot of collaboration going on there as well.
Will you be focusing on cybersecurity at all?
Well, the topic of security, it's of course very important, but for us at least, it's one of the things that comes later. So our feeling is that from a hardware resources point of view, you need very large processors, quantum processors, to run applications related to this. So I think it's an important topic, but again, from a timing perspective, it's not our main focus right now.
And aside from finance and aerospace, what are other use cases or applications you're planning to branch into?
Yeah, so these were basically the two related to Bilbao and Paris, finance in Bilbao and then aerospace in Paris. But then the people that we have in Munich, for example, they focus on chemistry and then also machine learning topics. So these are the pillars that we are currently betting on. As we are mainly focusing on hardware, so the strategy is that what we try to achieve with these teams is to design processors which are streamlined for certain applications. And this is why we have these efforts also on the application side. So the idea is, for example, that by doing certain tricks on the hardware level or on the chip design, you can make the processors more efficient to run certain algorithms. But then one processor, for example, is only streamlined for one algorithm, let's say in finance or in chemistry. So this means you need to redesign a little bit the systems. So this is our strategy here to kind of unlock the applications by becoming as hardware efficient as possible. And this is why this is what we call co-design. So we kind of design the systems from both ends. We come from the hardware side and know how to design the processors as such, but then we also, coming from the application side, we can introduce certain shortcuts in order to run algorithms in a more efficient way, and thus with smaller processors already.
Can you describe a bit more your co-design approach? Because you referenced it as co-designing quantum accelerators. What does that mean to someone that's not necessarily familiar with the industry, and how do you accelerate? I guess, how do you function as an accelerator? I mean, I understand that HPCs are your primary focus right now, but if you could touch on that in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So accelerator here is meant in a way that, assume you have a classical computer running a classical algorithm, and there is some part in this algorithm which is really, really hard to solve. So this is the bottleneck. Most of the time, the classical computer spends on solving this part of the algorithm. So if you had a more efficient way of running this specific part of the algorithm, you could speed up significantly the whole execution. And the idea is that you use then the quantum computer to solve exactly this hard part of the algorithm, whereas all the rest can still be executed on the classical computer. So this is the concept of a quantum accelerator, because you use the classical computer and the quantum computer in a hybrid mode. And the quantum computer solves the hard part to accelerate. But now the question is, okay, what are the problems again? And this brings us back to the application topic. And then, of course, for example, let's take the example of chemistry. Then it might be that to solve this bottleneck problem in the algorithm, you need to do some tweaks. You need to do some redesigning of the processor, for example, in order to get the best out of the system. And in this way, in a sense, we can really bring value then to the customer by accelerating a relevant problem, let's say in chemistry or so, by designing the hardware such that it runs the most difficult part of the algorithm in a very efficient way.
And is most of your work commercial, or is it driven by government work?
Well, so if you look at the, let's say, supercomputing scene, or HPC, the high performance computing scene, there are different kind of supercomputing centers. There are scientific supercomputing centers, which are usually publicly funded, and they run algorithms for the scientific community, so for academic sector. And then, of course, there are also supercomputing centers which are affiliated with the military. And then there are supercomputing centers which are used by industry. And so far, what we have been doing is we have been selling to the scientific supercomputing centers. And the reason is that for them, actually, the application, the industrial use case is not the main driver. This is not their business model. Their business model is to provide scientific computing time to the academic sector. In this is one of the reasons why they're actually already interested now in the quantum computers, because they want to serve the scientific community, and the scientists and the researchers. They can do very nice things on our quantum computers. This is one thing. And the other argument is that these scientific supercomputing centers, they see themselves also as early adopters of the technology. So they want to be there very early in the game, want to know what does it mean to run a quantum computer on premise, what does it mean in terms of specifications, are there certain limits, let's say, to vibrations in the environment or electromagnetic noise or other things like that. So this is what we are currently doing, but of course in the future we want to, or we are going to expand this also more towards the commercial side. The goal, of course, is to, on the one hand side, sell then to these supercomputing centers, which are serving the industry, so which are running use cases, let's say in chemistry or any of the other topics we have been discussing, or also then basically selling computing time directly to the end customer. So this brings us back, for example, to this cloud strategy, which still we think it will come, but it just will come at a later stage.
Are you planning a US expansion?
So we are not kind of saying no to it at the moment. We are focusing very much on Europe. As you can see also from the news, we have been expanding to Spain and Paris. And one of the reasons is that at the moment, actually, we see a lot of potential already in Europe. And in a sense, we can cover there a large fraction of the market. This is our assumption. And in the US, there is already very strong competition. As you know, there are many large corporates and startups as well. So we still have to find our best way to get in. And we are working on this in the background. But at the moment, we don't have any specific plans that will be executed soon in the US.
You mentioned that you have over 100 employees in Germany at this point. So what is the total count globally, including your international offices?
So we have around 140 employees at the moment. As said, most of them in Finland, I think around 30, or a little bit more than 30 now in Munich. And then we just start hiring in France and in Bilbao.
Thank you. And where are you in your fundraising rounds?
Yeah, so from a financing perspective, we are still mainly backed by venture capital. So we have closed 2 funding rounds, one in summer 2019, our seed round, which was 11.5 million euros, and then one in November 2020, which was about 40 million euros. Actually, in addition to this, of course, we have other also means of financing. For example, in quantum, since it's a very hot but still also a very scientific topic, you can get still quite a lot of research grants, for example, from the governments. And I think we have more than 15 million euros of research grants for the company. And also now we have signed deals already. So we have one deal in Finland, which in total was a 20 million euro deal, and one just signed in Germany. From this, we get revenue, of course, as well. So we are not only financed anymore by venture capital, but we have now a mix of venture capital, grants, and then revenue generation. But still, we still need more funding rounds, so more in investment rounds. And we're currently fundraising, and hopefully soon we will be able to announce something in this respect.
Like what? Can you announce it now?
Unfortunately, we are not that far yet.
So what are you most excited for the next 5 years? What can we expect from IQM by then?
Well, I'm really most excited of getting the whole systems work at a large scale. So as you know, quantum computers are very complex systems, and it's not trivial to build them, nor is it trivial to operate them. So once you have a system that works, still keeping it operated and keeping it stable and all of this, it requires a lot of work also on the software side. So seeing our quantum computers working at large scale, for example, reaching quantum supremacy or any of those milestones, I think this will be really major breakthroughs. And then, of course, what we are all working for in the field is this kind of quantum advantage goal. So really building a system that is able to solve problems that are relevant and that are creating value and solving some of the hard problems that we have here. So this is, I think, what is going to come within the next 5 years. It's hard to tell exactly when it's going to come, but we are very confident that it will come. And of course, this is something that we all work for, using the quantum computers to solve meaningful tasks.
Do you expect that you'll be a public company in that time frame in the next 5 years?
Well, I cannot exclude it. So in a sense, of course, we need to grow, and if things go right and we are able to create revenue and repeatedly create a revenue and increasingly create revenue, I think this would be a good trigger, for example, to go public. But there are also other ways that the story could go. But at the moment, I think the IPO is the most likely exit scenario that we see for us. Yeah, when it will come, well, maybe it will come within the next 5 years, but also this is really hard to say.
And is your intention to do this in Europe or in the US, the IPO?
Well, we haven't made our mind on this question yet. So both is possible. I think we will do what is in the end best for the company, or for the long-term success of the company, and we will evaluate then several places to go public. And whether it will be the US or Europe, we don't know yet at this point.
And how are you planning to use the additional funds that you're raising? Is it primarily for international expansion, R&D teams? How are you?
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, it's a mix of everything. So of course we are still very R&D heavy. So more than 75% of our employees are working on the R&D side, on the technical development. And I think it will still be a significant fraction in the future who are just developing the systems, since we don't yet have the large-scale quantum computer ready. So there still needs to be a lot of work put into developing the quantum computer. But then also, as you said, international expansion and also commercialization, marketing, all of these topics will consume some of the proceeds then in the future.
And how is the pandemic affecting your business, if at all, still?
Well, there are several aspects, of course, to this question. One is, how does it affect the operations? And the other one is, how does it affect the business as such? So the way, for example, we can sell the quantum computers. So on the operations side, I think we have been somehow getting quite smoothly through the pandemic. Also, in Finland, for example, the situation was never super severe. So most of the time, people actually could come to the office if they wanted to. So we leave it to them. And then, of course, from time to time, there are these waves, like right now we see with Omicron, and then maybe we close the office for a few weeks or so. But nevertheless, so from an operational point of view, I think we managed to get quite smoothly through the pandemic, and the R&D has been kind of staying on track. So we didn't have any delays in the R&D roadmaps due to Corona. Of course, something that what we are facing also is the problems on the supply chain side. So, for example, electronic components, chipsets that we use, classical chipsets that we use to control the quantum computers, they have very long lead times, and this is something that we need to anticipate and plan well in advance. But then on the commercial side, actually, it's a little bit awkward to say, but the pandemic kind of helped us with our strategy, because due to the pandemic, many countries actually put up these huge recovery plans for these economic recovery plans, and many of them actually have very large budgets also for quantum. And this is something that we have been benefiting from, again, on several levels, from research grants. So we got quite a few research grants from these projects, but then also on the sales side. So these national quantum projects, often they include, for example, the purchase of quantum computers, and this is something that we're actually benefiting from in this situation.
And what are your thoughts as it relates to the general lack of diversity in quantum?
Yeah, well, it's a super important topic, and we're trying to be active on this and do as much as we can. The thing is that as a company, of course, we are sitting at the end of the chain, so to say. So we can only hire, for example, what the universities are spit out. So basically, for me, of course, it is important to promote diversity in the field and to support as much as we can the topic. But I think if we really want to change something, we must actually act in much earlier stage of the education chain. So maybe in primary school or so, also then in university. So what if you look at some studies, you see actually that for example, the fraction of female students, it just reduces over time in technical subjects. So I think what we need to do is, for example, find out how can we make sure that more actually stay within the field and don't drop out. And this is something where we are trying to be active. So we have a few programs where we try to educate in schools. We have actually a system in Germany in a museum as well. And also always this is somehow related to make the technology visible and available to the broad public, to all levels of society, and so that basically everyone can get fascinated, for example, by the technology. So yeah, I think it's a difficult topic and it's not easy to solve. So I think the only thing we can do is to be as active as we can in promoting diversity. I think what we also need is to create role models, so just examples, and this is something that we also do. So we have actually in our leadership positions, both on the technical and not technical side, for example, we have females and we have also hired females there. So we really try to be active. But as said, I think it's a very big topic, and it's something that the whole society must work on together, in my opinion.
So are you still having fun? We've spoken a couple of times. You always have such a fantastic attitude. So is the job still as exciting as it was in the past?
Well, I think it's one of the most exciting jobs that you can have, because it's basically, it brings something new every day, and you see kind of how the field grows, the complete field. You see how your company grows, how the team grows, and kind of how you grow within the systems yourself, and this is something super exciting. So for me, I think again, if I would have the choice to start a company again like this, I would always do it. I think, and for all the people out there who are kind of thinking about it, I think it's really something that you should do, because you learn so much on it, and there is so much kind of new things out there that you can discover by starting and running a company. So it's really an amazing job. I love doing it, and I hope that the journey still continues for quite some time like this.
Well, thank you so very much for your time. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you. It was really nice. Thank you.